This is America on the Road, winner of the International Auto Media Conference Gold Medal Award for Radio and now in its 25th year on the air. And this is a very special episode of America on the Road. There's big news this week at America on the Road. We have just entered into an agreement with the SportsMap Radio Network to carry our show. And our first broadcast for the network will be on August 14th. So look for that show on a radio station near you. Of course, we will continue to podcast as well each week, as we have been doing. And we thank you very much for being loyal listeners to America on the Road. This is going to change a little bit the timing when we post the show. We will change the posting time from Friday, as has been typical up till now, to Mondays moving forward. So look for that. But we will still be doing a weekly podcast. And we're so thankful that you listen to America on the Road. That's very, very important to us. As we prepare for our network debut here, this is one of our favorite past shows. This was broadcast originally in February, and there's some new information in it as well. So I think you'll enjoy this particular show, and join us again for new shows starting next week. And again, we're excited to be on the SportsMap Radio Network starting on August 14th. So join us for that as well. Thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. And now, with all that said, here is that previous episode of America on the Road. This is America on the Road, winner of the International Automotive Media Conference Gold Medal Award for Radio and now in its 24th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. Today we're going to identify the safest cars in America for you. It'll be interesting. I think you'll like that. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at mercuryinsurance.com. Well, I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris is based in Maine. I guess you're having a little better weather than you had maybe a week or so ago, huh, Chris?
We're in the midst of fake spring, or fool's spring, as people like to call it. So we've had, 40s, 50s, which is quite balmy for this time of year.
Yeah.
I assume that would be frigid for your area of the country, though.
Yeah, true. I'm balmy any time of the year, and it is when it gets down to around under 60 degrees here. We consider it quite cold, which is odd because I grew up in Chicago with below zero weather frequently, and I can remember living through that. And now when it gets down about 50 or 60, I remember coaching some softball games for my girls where it was about 50 degrees and the wind was blowing and I was just about as cold as I've ever been. I was shivering. It was like crazy. So, but this is not a weather show. We are not meteorologists. We are actually car experts. And to prove it, this week we have as our special guest Bill Loewenthal. He is Senior Vice President of Product at ChargePoint. And they're a really big player in the electric vehicle charging space. I like the way people say space these days in that business. He's a fascinating guy. I expect to have a fascinating conversation with him. He has a lot to say about this. He's also an evangelist for electric cars, so we'll enjoy that. In the car review segment, Chris will discuss. What will you discuss, Chris?
I spent the week in the 2021 Acura TLX.
Yeah. Very nice. A little cramped probably at some of the time, and you wish you had a washroom, but otherwise, it's probably quite nice for the week. I will be talking about the 2021 LX570, the full-size luxury SUV from Lexus. But before we do that, let's dive into the automotive news. Do you have a story for us, Chris?
I do. It's a very quick one, though. We've talked about Carvana and the experience of buying and selling cars online, and they've had the commercials now for a while where they have the big car vending machine, the glass walls. It's very dramatic.
I've been in there. I had the giant quarter to drop into it in my hand.
So the story that just came out this morning out of Las Vegas is that they've opened a new one. It's got a 39 vehicle capacity. It's 11 stories tall, but this one doubles as a car slot machine. So details are scarce, but it does sound like in addition to buying a car from the vending machine, you might be able to gamble and win one. Maybe out falls the gumball. You never know.
Yeah, I like that. Whenever I go to Vegas, I play the candy machines. you put in 50 cents and you pull the lever, and you almost always get a candy bar. It's really kind of amazing. I have an uncanny luck with that, and I feel pretty good about it. But that's all I do in Las Vegas. But we'll have to check that out the next time we go to Sin City. Check out the Carvana vending machine there and slot machine. Can't wait to see that. On a more serious note, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has announced their award winners for 2021. So these are the safest cars we alluded to a little earlier in the show. They have named 49 vehicle models top safety pick pluses. That's their highest award. And then there are an additional 41 vehicles as top safety picks. So that's 90 award winners. So that's quite a few award winners, based on the fact that there are only 350 or so models out there. They actually include submodels in here, so it's not quite as all-inclusive as it might seem to be. To become a top safety pick plus or a top safety pick, the vehicle have to get good ratings in 6 crashworthiness tests: the driver's side small overlap front test, the passenger side small overlap front test, the moderate overlap front test, the side roof strength and head restraint tests. So those are all the tests that they have to go through. And then they have to have advanced ratings in vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-pedestrian evaluations. I like that vehicle-to-pedestrian thing. You really want to avoid running your car into pedestrians. I'm all in favor of that. And one of the pieces of safety equipment that is critical to their awards and maybe not all that well reported is, what piece of equipment do you think, Chris?
Headlights.
You are so good. And you're probably reading
I'm actually not, but
the results. But no, you're very bright, and headlights are very critical. And I think very underreported, how important it is to see where you're going. That's really important for safety. And so the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety has figured that out. We can't go over all 90 in this show. There's just not time to do that. But some of the highlights, Hyundai Motor Group, which includes Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, and the Genesis brands, had the highest total of awards this year. They had 12 top safety picks and 5 top safety pick pluses. Boy, I have a difficult time saying that, I think. And Volvo, as maybe you might guess, had the most top safety pick pluses. They had 9 for 2021. And here's another question for you. What do you think was the segment of the industry that had the highest number of top safety pick plus winners?
Oh, geez. If I had to guess, it would be a crossover of the crossover category, maybe the small or compact crossover category.
It's a really good guess, and you're very close. It is the mid-sized luxury SUV category. Of course, virtually all of those are crossovers. And because they're luxury, they can afford to be equipped with the highly expensive safety equipment that allows them to be named a top safety pick plus. So that's good. Another interesting segment, or was interesting to me, was the number of vehicles in this particular segment that scored very high in safety. It's non-intuitive, so that's a good hint for you as we're doing this guessing game with the IIHS awards. What do you think that segment would be? A lot of awards, but non-intuitive.
Small cars, small vehicles.
Brilliant. Gosh, you're just too smart.
I promise I'm not looking at the list.
Yes, well, and that's really absolutely 100% right. They don't have a lot of top safety pick pluses among small cars, only 4 actually. But then there's a whole bunch of top safety picks among small cars, and you wouldn't necessarily think that. I mean, small cars are not noted necessarily for their high safety. Typically, I don't think they're unsafe cars, but they have kind of a reputation of not being all that safe. And yet, this is the segment that had, I think if I'm adding those up, that's 16 actual top safety picks or top safety pick pluses.
Probably about the evasive technology there more than anything.
Yeah, evasive technology, and there's a lot of safety technology that's standard in so many of the small cars these days from some of the mass market brands, so that's very good. Here is a little bit of a prediction from TrueCar. It's a prediction about what February vehicle sales are going to be, and they're going to be down pretty significantly, according to TrueCar, down 7.6% from a year ago. Of course, February of 2020 was about the last good sales month, right? I mean, after February, sales really took a dive as COVID really struck. So it's interesting to me that sales are down very significantly from that February a year ago, even though it seems like things are on the upturn now in terms of the disease and in terms of business lockdowns coming off and those kinds of things. This gives a seasonally adjusted annualized sales rate, what they call the SAAR in the industry, is estimated to be 15.5 million units. That means if vehicles sold at this rate, there would be 15.5 million cars sold in 2021. Last year, that number, the real number, was 14.6, almost 14.7 million. So we're ahead of last year in terms of pace, but I expected it maybe to be just a little bit more optimistic. What's your take on that, Chris?
I agree. Just intuitively, we talk about small cars not being intuitively safe, but this, it doesn't make that much sense on the surface. So did they provide any reasoning for why they feel it will be lower in February of this year?
Well, I think a lot had to do with the terrible weather. You certainly experienced that. So there's a lot of snow everywhere. And there was even snow in Texas and shut down much of Texas, of course, a giant car market for at least a week during this month. So that certainly was one of the issues. There's also some issue with supply, some vehicles, and there's a microchip shortage, so that's hurting supply. So a lot of things going on. The average transaction price, that's what people are paying on average for the vehicle they buy, is up very significantly. They were up 6.6%. $2,300, almost $2,400 up from the same month a year ago. They're even up $500 from last month, which indicates those people who are buying cars are buying, big cars, or buying a lot of equipment as they buy the cars. Meanwhile, a lot of people can't afford to buy cars at all.
Yeah, that one does actually make a little sense. You read a lot about, especially with the new Ford F-150, for example, when it started selling, they were selling the top 2 or 3 trims above all else, and we're selling them faster than they can make them. So people definitely want the plushest thing they can buy.
Well, speaking about the plushest thing you can buy, and I didn't say that very well either, but the plushest thing you could buy, Ford is bringing out a King Ranch edition of its Ford Explorer, which will capture a lot of King Ranch. King Ranch is, I think, bigger than the state of Rhode Island. Which is kind of near to you there in Maine. So you can get some sense of how big the King Ranch is. The King Ranch actually uses 300 Ford vehicles just to work the ranch. 300 vehicles. That's kind of crazy. But the Ford Explorer, of course, one of our favorite midsize SUVs, is now going to have this King Ranch edition, and it features the Running W brand all over the place, and liberal use of leather. Although I'm not sure if I could use the word liberal in connection with the state of Texas. I am. And so a lot of stuff going on there. Refined might not be the exact word to describe it, but it's going to be certainly different than the typical Explorer. And if you like leather, and if you like stitching, if you like branding, well, you're probably going to like the Ford Explorer King Ranch Edition.
Yeah, I don't love the branding, but I've always loved the F-150 King Ranch. The interiors, they're just so nice. You can't beat it. And looking at the pictures of the Explorer, it looks like it'll be much of the same. But that W everywhere, it starts to wear on me after a little while.
I'm wondering why it has taken so long. You would think that there would have been a King Ranch edition of the Explorer 10 years ago. I mean, it's 20 years ago that they introduced the first King Ranch edition of the F-150. So, hey, Ford, what took you so long? But I guess they got there. So that's a good thing. So when we come back, and we promise we will come back, we're going to have a little tiny bit of music, and then we're going to come back. We're going to do our road test segment. And in that road test segment, we will be looking at the Acura TLX. If you're not familiar with exactly what that is, it's a sports sedan. Right, Chris?
Yeah, well, it attempts to be, yes.
Okay, well, a little preview of the review. And I will be talking about the 2021 Lexus LX 570, their massive SUV. So stay with us. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad, and you're on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague. Jack Nerad with you for road test time on America on the Road. We're, of course, excited to road test vehicles. That's what we do for a living. That's one of our loves, certainly. I have loved doing it for several decades now. And Chris, though more recently to it, I think loves it as much as I do. And Chris, you had a vehicle that I'm not certain you fell in love with. Tell us a bit about the Acura TLX.
Well, I think I'm going to say this that strongly, I guess. Everyone, and including Acura and a lot of reviewers themselves, consider the TLX a sports sedan, and I agree. It's aggressive looking, it handles well, it's comfortable, it's fun to drive, but it's not. I think that I would prefer it much more to err on the luxury side. I think the car has so much going for it. I think the sporting intentions of the car kind of get in the way, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. So. This is the 2021 Acura TLX. This is the advanced, I guess you could call it a package or trim. This is right now the range-topping model that's available. There'll be a Type S model a little bit later on with a V6 and a lot more power, and that one probably will be a full-fledged sports sedan. But the car is quite large, at least on the outside. You look at it, it looks big and heavy, and in driving it, you can definitely feel that too. The model that's on sale right now, including the one I tested, has a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that's 272 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. My car had the super handling all-wheel drive system, which is very nice. It's able to move power between the wheels, especially right now with all the snow melting. There's a lot of water on the road. This also had a 10-speed automatic transmission, very smooth, stayed out of the way. But again, going back to that line between sports and comfort, I think the transmission lets down the engine a little bit. It doesn't hang on to gears. It's not very quick with paddle shifts. So for my money, I would buy this car expecting a luxury sedan, even though it does 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds. And despite the fact that it runs 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds, it's still just so much more car than it should be to be a true sports sedan. I think it's a lot more comfortable and should be treated that way. What do you think, Jack?
It's interesting. I was talking to one of the development engineers, one of the chief guys, and I think we actually used the interview and have the interview on a previous edition of America on the Road about the vehicle. And one of the things they're doing with the vehicle at Acura is they're kind of splitting two segments. If you were comparing it to, say, the BMW, it would be a competitor for both the 3 Series and the 5 Series. So it's, a lot bigger than a compact luxury sports sedan would be. And I think that's part of the thing you're feeling there. In the absence of driving them back to back, I don't know that I felt it was that much bulkier or harder to maneuver than, say, a smaller sports sedan would be. But, I see your point.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that I don't think it can be fun to drive, because it absolutely can. I think that believing it or buying it, wanting a sports sedan, is maybe the wrong approach. I think it has those elements and it does those things well, handles well, brakes well, steering is comfortable, and decent feedback there. But I think that, if you buy it thinking I want a mid-sized luxury sedan, you're going to be a lot happier, because it is extremely nice. The advanced package had real leather interior, heated and ventilated front seats, heated steering wheel. I think it's a 10.2-inch screen. I'll have to correct myself if I'm wrong later. Yes, 10.2-inch screen, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. This car had the ELS audio system that Acura does. It was excellent. And the car does very well in wet weather and slippery weather. The back seats are comfortable for adults. It's a little lacking on legroom, as you mentioned before, but even the kids in their car seats, we reinstalled the full-size car seat for my 4-year-old after trying a booster. She's a little too small for that one, but even the full-size car seat, she had some leg room with the front seat moved up a little bit. And the trunk was decently sized too. I would say, 3 or 4 decently sized suitcases would fit back there. So, for a family taking a road trip, it's probably going to be good. Adults riding in the back seat, if you're 6 feet like I am, Jack, as you love to hear. You might have some trouble back there, but otherwise, I think it's a great looking car. It's extremely comfortable, as I said, handles well, but I don't think I would consider it a sports sedan, or if I were shopping for a dedicated sports sedan, that probably wouldn't be the car. If I were looking for a luxury sedan with sporting elements, that would be my pick.
Yeah, I think you sum it up very, very well, because I think that's what they deliver there. And I think Acura is pretty plain about doing that. They understand what they have and what they don't have. And I think you, as I say, summed it up well. So an interesting vehicle, the Acura TLX, and we'll see how that fares in what is a very, very competitive marketplace, that's for certain. Well, I was driving a vehicle that's also in a very, very competitive marketplace, and we're talking about full-size luxury SUVs, although I guess there are not as many full-size luxury SUVs as there are mid-size luxury SUVs or compact luxury SUVs. For some of the imports, big gets kind of out of their ballpark. It's not in their sweet spot, but for Lexus, the Lexus LX 570 is big. I would say, though, it's not as big and thus not as roomy inside, not as comfortable inside as, say, a GMC Yukon would be, or a Chevy Suburban would be, or a Cadillac Escalade for that matter, all of which are somewhat competitive to the LX. It does have a very stylish exterior. It gets your attention anyway. Certainly the Lexus grille gets a lot of people's attention. It also has an engine that can get your attention. It is a 5.7-liter V8. It produces 383 horsepower, a ton of torque, 403 pound-feet of torque. So that's a lot. 8-speed automatic transmission. And it uses a full-time four-wheel drive system, which we might call an all-wheel drive system rather than a four-wheel drive system. There is a Torsen limited-slip center differential. It has electronic locking as well, so that makes it very off-road friendly. You'd be surprised how well this vehicle will fare off-road, because it doesn't look like something that maybe would be a great off-roader. It just looks big and bulky in a good way, in a stylish way, but it looks big. There's no doubt about that. It is rated to tow up to 7,000 pounds, which is a reasonable number. There are full-size SUVs that will tow more, of course, but that's a reasonable number, I think, for something like this. And then it has that throwback body-on-frame structure that we're so fond of with traditional SUVs. Certainly the Chevy Suburban and etc. all are separate body-on-frame. It has 5 different modes for different types of terrain. It has standard 20-inch 10-spoke wheels, and you can get 21-inch wheels as an option. Plenty of big wheels going on. The vehicle I had was the Inspiration package, that it has a blacked-out grille and kind of blacked-out what would otherwise be chrome. I'm not sure it was exactly my taste. Maybe the more standard one would have been okay. It's had white body color and then blacked out all around, and maybe that was just too stark a contrast. But
it's inspiring.
It is an inspiration, and it might have inspired you. I mean, what's your take on the Lexus LX versus some of the other vehicles in its segment, Chris?
I think people buy the Lexus LX kind of as a purposeful buy. People who know about it want it and buy it. I'm a big fanboy. The Toyota Land Cruiser, the LX is, I've got a long history of wanting one of those vehicles. So I think, will it do better off-road than a Suburban or a Tahoe? Yeah, probably. But you kind of have to go into it wanting to buy it. But, personally, I love them. I think they're great for what they are.
Yeah, and there's certainly plenty of luxury. I want to make that very, very clear. Heated and ventilated front and second row seats. Oh boy, ventilated second row seats. I like that. It has a climate concierge. It automatically monitors the temperature in 4 separate climate zones. And the interior isn't all that big, so it's interesting that it does that. It also has a rear seat entertainment system, which strike me as becoming passé. And, maybe you can speak to that. It has dual 11.6-inch screens, so that's pretty good. Those are big screens. It has HDMI input for the second row and wireless headphones. You've got two daughters that ride in the back seat a lot. What's your take on an integrated system like that?
They love seeing the screens in the back of the vehicles that we get occasionally. Most of them, surprisingly, I guess, are FCA vehicles, or I guess Stellantis vehicles now. But when they work, they're fine, but they're not as intuitive or as flexible as just a couple of iPads hanging on the back of the seat. Especially if you have HDMI inputs, you're going to be fiddling with a DVD player or a Blu-ray player while you're driving, or maybe a portable video game system of some sort. But I think, the iPad is a much better solution, and it's probably cheaper just to buy a couple of, what do you call it, holders for the back of the seat, but definitely not as stylish.
Or, the kids can actually handhold, not handheld, but they can handhold those devices too. I think,
exactly.
Probably. Yeah. So that works out. So interesting vehicles. I think not the tops of their segments, but certainly worthy of attention. And the fact that the TLX is pretty new, I think, commands some attention too. So take a look at that. And a lot of tech there. And if you want to split the difference between a compact and a mid-size luxury sport vehicle, it's certainly a good choice. And the Lexus LX, this time around, it's the LX 570. Certainly a very robust vehicle that can endure all the off-road you want to throw at it, and at the same time take you to the opera if you want. So a couple interesting vehicles we have that are worthy of attention, I think. And when we come back, we will be doing an interview with Bill Loewenthal. He is the Senior Vice President at ChargePoint. We're going to be talking about the whole issue revolving around EV charging, both publicly and at home. A lot of issues concerned with that, of course, and he is the expert on it, so we'll be taking a long time to talk with him. In fact, we're eschewing. We are not doing our listener question segment, so we can bring you all of the interview with Bill Loewenthal. So stay with us for that. When we come back with Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you. We have a really interesting guest talking about a fascinating topic. I think there's a lot more to this topic than meets the eye, and we're talking about electric vehicle charging. Our guest is Bill Loewenthal. He's the Senior Vice President of Product with ChargePoint, a major player in that industry. Bill, thanks so much for being with us. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Give our listeners who might be pretty unaware of the infrastructure issues dealing with electric vehicles some background on ChargePoint, on charging vehicles as a whole, and then we can dive even deeper into that.
Sure. So ChargePoint is a leader in enabling the movement to electric mobility. And we've actually been at this longer than there's been EV vehicles, which is amazing. And what we do is we provide the solution to various site hosts to provide electric mobility charging to their constituents, and at the same time have a free mobile application for drivers, so that as being a member of the ChargePoint network, their credentials are then in their mobile phone or through an RFID key can access these chargers. You might see them at retail environments, many workplaces, many multifamily properties, parking operators, stadiums, airports. And the idea here is what these site hosts, as we call them, the places where you find the chargers, they're deploying these because they want to really serve their consumer base or their workforce or tenant pool. And what ChargePoint's providing is oftentimes you'll notice us by our orange stations, but we have a complete solution from the station to the kind of the platform that site host is using to determine which pricing is set for which driver groups on those particular stations, and it publishes those stations into our maps available to drivers through the mobile application. We're also integrated into Apple CarPlay. So if your vehicle's equipped with that in your EV, you can use that, as well as you'll see Android Auto coming from us as well. And a number of auto manufacturers have built ChargePoint directly into the dashboard. So that combination of me as a driver, I have my ChargePoint credentials, I can find this chargers, where I'm going and charge, and then it's all kind of settled through the ChargePoint network in terms of payment. If those stations require payment, many of them do not, and that's the backbone of what we do.
So it strikes me that you're doing a very complex set of tasks to make something simple for the consumer, and that is charging their vehicle, right? I mean, in the simplest terms, they think of it as, I'm just going to go plug in my vehicle, right? Or that's how people think about it. But to make that happen takes a lot more than finding an electrical plug and sticking a cord in and a socket into or a cord into a socket, right?
Yeah, precisely. And we really want to make it simple. And I think one of the, the listeners of your show, we love vehicles. We love cars, right? We love driving. And one of the things that's so liberating about driving an electric vehicle is the convenience of, I'm leaving, like I charge at home and I charge at work. So what's interesting is I'm charging where the car is parked. And this is a big myth that people don't understand. They think that I'm going to go, just like in a gas station environment, I'm going to drive to fuel. You really don't do that predominantly. What you predominantly do is you charge where it's parked. And so what's so liberating is I get in my vehicle in the morning or at end of day at work, and I'm leaving with a full battery. And I'm only really replacing the energy used in between my destinations. I'm not driving it to zero and topping it all the way up. So that's kind of a typical, it's very much like my cell phone. So it makes it very seamless. And to your point, Jack, what's kind of cool that what we've orchestrated is I can take my mobile phone or my Apple Watch and tap it to the front of ChargePoint station, and that's what authenticates they know it's me, unlocks the connector so I can just plug it in my car, and off I go. And so it's a very simple, fast interaction, and it's super convenient. So people will say, well, how long does it take to charge your car? Well, 10 seconds, because that's what it took to plug it in. Then I'm off to work, and I come back, I unplug it, and I drive off, and I don't have to make stops along the way. That's what's so liberating about this.
So you're not doing it, though, in residential locations, or are you? It sounds like
you bet we are.
Oh, you are? Okay, so you're doing it in residential locations and in work locations and other commerce kind of locations. Okay, tell me about that. That's a misconception I had.
Yeah, so a couple things to illustrate here. We're providing the solution to a variety of site hosts and then represent that into this network that drivers can then access to charge their vehicle. When we think about the various segments that need to be electrified, there's quite many, and they're actually pretty logical. And so, and this is more of the business side of ChargePoint, but when we are looking at the market, there's certainly a lot of residential solutions that are required in the market. So we provide, and you can find it on many of your favorite places to shop at chargepoint.com. One of the leading chargers in terms of the ChargePoint Home Flex that actually goes up to 50 amps, which is super cool because it's kind of forward compatible for whatever car you might get in the future. And so that's a home solution that a consumer can put in their home. Then there's also solutions that would go into a multifamily property. So many people across America today are, and increasingly in the future, are going to be living in multi-dwelling kind of environments. And so there we have great solutions for both that property owner, but also the tenant, so that we can scale this. And I think what we're going to increasingly see, and there's a dizzying number of exciting cars coming, and there's also corresponding incentives and policy directives that are requiring and incentivizing electric build-out. So you're going to see more and more multifamily properties, workplaces, public parking and venues with electric vehicle charging. And there's already so many more than people realize exist. But so those are some of the segments. So residential is one. Then you think about workplace, retail, dining, hospitality, parking. Those are all various places that we enable. Maybe not as germane to the show, but very significant to the environment and the transition of transportation to electrification is the fleet space. And you're going to see many, many fleets move to electric drivetrains because it is a much more efficient platform for them to run their business on from a TCO, total cost of ownership perspective, lower maintenance profile, and then great environmental benefits, which are mandated in many markets. And so the fleet movement is super exciting in the whole mobility transportation space that we're going to see over the next several decades. So we're doing all of this. And we're doing it with a combination of various industry-leading hardware, from the ChargePoint Home Flex that I mentioned to solutions that address fleet, multifamily, public charging, as well as high-speed fast charging that you're going to find along corridors as you travel across the country. And so we're doing that coupled with all those experiences to make a great driver experience in dash, in your pocket. You can ask Alexa, where's my closest charger? Am I charging now? All those integrations to make it really simple for consumers.
Are you a hardware provider? Do you manufacture hardware? Do you do the contracting to do installation? I mean, where does ChargePoint begin and end on all of this?
So at the heart, we're the system provider, the combination of the hardware and the software necessary for a site host to offer electric vehicle charging. On top of that, many need guidance and help about to properly design their parking lot or their fleet depot, in some cases, to go through that electrification and even construction build out. So we enable that and have those services available from ChargePoint. Plus, we want to make sure, for everyone's sake, that there's a great and consistent experience as they go from charger to charger. So we also provide services to our hosts to support the ongoing maintenance of those chargers. We're designing and building the hardware, we're designing and building the software, and then all the solutions around it for a great experience. I think one of the things that's interesting is because we can control the hardware, the software, and that mobile experience, like I mentioned with the Apple Watch and the mobile phone I can tap to authenticate, we also can instrument it with great diagnostics so we can make sure those stations are up and ready for the next driver. And that's really, really important to us. We are obsessive about the driver experience, the accuracy of the pins so that one can find them, the description of the charger so that they understand if it's in a parking lot that has a fee associated with it. Those are all things that we think are really critical for a great environmentally critical transition to electric mobility.
Right. I want to dive into the business aspects of this in a minute, but first I want to make it clear to our listeners what they can expect in terms of the visibility of ChargePoint and how they interact with ChargePoint. Talk a bit about that, about a electric vehicle owner and what their experience would be with ChargePoint.
Okay. So when you get an electric vehicle, one of the first things you would do is download the ChargePoint app. It's available on the Apple App Store as well as on the Google Play Store. And then you would create a ChargePoint account. It's free. And then what you'll see is a list of stations around your immediate vicinity. And you would input the profile of your vehicle. And you would do that because different vehicles have different connectors. And therefore, we can show you the relevant stations with the appropriate connectors based on your availability in your vehicle and your proximity. And then you could put a funding source in, like a credit card. And then as you go approach a station, you would tap to charge your phone, or you could authenticate in a variety of ways you would then plug in the car, and we would alert you through the mobile app when your session is done. And if that particular site host has any kind of what we call idle fees, because since your session is done, they want to make sure you would then vacate that space to allow another driver to charge so that there's good availability. And I think the other thing that will be surprising to folks when they look at the app, and they don't have to have an EV to download the app and take a look, and you can go to our website, chargepoint.com, to see this as well. But there's hundreds of thousands of places to charge. And they're in places that they're there and you don't really realize it. They're in your favorite parking garages. They're in your libraries. They're in your city parking lots. They're at your work. They're all around you. but it's a different interaction model than that of a gas station. So it's not like you're driving by them every day and they're standing out as this dedicated, purposeful thing. And so again, the model is I I I fuel while I park, and I onboard most of my fuel at home and at work. And then as they make a road trip, they'll say I'm in the Bay Area, and so maybe we're going to go up to Lake Tahoe, and then I would be finding more and more available chargers along the way that I can use. An important point too, ChargePoint is a network, a collection of stations that are available to these drivers. There are other networks available in North America, and your ChargePoint credentials work with those. So I can take my ChargePoint credentials to an EVgo station, which is a network that's out there, and I can use those credentials to access the EVgo chargers, and I don't have to create a different account basis, what have you. It's all contained inside of my ChargePoint app. And the reason people like that is I get this full picture of what it takes to charge and fuel my vehicle from an economic basis. And you typically see people smile about it's so cheap to actually run my vehicle on electrons. And so that's one of the excitement and liberation that people feel when they're driving EV is the driving experience is very liberating. We can talk about that in a minute. It's like a supercar, and then the no stops along the way, and then this full picture of the low cost of operation between maintenance and fuel.
Yeah, well, and the convenience aspect of not having multiple accounts, but having one account that essentially works everywhere. It's like having a credit card that works at every gas station across the country, right? I mean,
precisely.
Yeah.
And I can use it's similar to I can use my ATM card, regardless of which bank that issued it to me on multiple ATMs. It's the same kind of concept.
Let's talk about the connector issue, because it strikes me that, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like there are few enough charging stations as it is, and then you limit the number of charging stations you can use because of connector issues, where non-compatibility of connectors. Talk a bit about your thoughts on that.
I actually think that's not as predominant in the overall that's affecting people's experience. And so largely when you're charging at work, or in kind of what we would call longer dwell situations, you're charging on level 2 AC charging, and we're pretty standardized there in North America on a J1772 plug, and Teslas have adapters that plug into those, so it's no problem. You can go everywhere. The adapter issues come up more in fast charge environments, and there you're seeing very much of a standardization coming much more around what's called CCS. And so we'll see continual availability of CHAdeMO, which was used by a variety of cars over the last decade. So you'll see the continual availability, but it will sort itself out basically but through market share. And so it's a problem that's kind of naturally working itself out through market forces.
Right. Well, today, predominantly, of course, Tesla is the predominant EV, right? I mean, by leaps and bounds. I mean, much bigger market share than any brand has on the internal combustion engine side. So, and that's going to change. At least it's likely to, where we will see EVs from many other manufacturers as they jump into the game.
Yeah, and there are adapters to charge on CHAdeMO chargers, which is a technical specification of an adapter type, a high-speed DC charger, to adapt those to a Tesla input. So that exists today, and then I think we'll see more kind of enablement of that kind of solution. So whatever DC chargers out there can support the Tesla environment. But you're right, there is an exciting amount of cars coming, and I think what's exciting also is, they're coming in all shapes and sizes that address the different needs that drivers have across the country. And so there's exciting pickup trucks and SUVs and sports-oriented vehicles and what have you. And so it's amazing. It's going to be really exciting, and I think you're going to see a lot of dramatic adoption around the world. There's a lot going on in Europe in terms of EV adoption. And I think we'll see a lot here as these cars are released.
Right. Do you feel like you're kind of, and you and your company are evangelists for EVs, spreading the good word about them in addition to serving that customer?
We are obsessive about this transition because we think it's right for society. We think if you're a driver, it's a great experience. And so, yes, I definitely think we're evangelists. There's no downsides here. It's good for everyone. It is a transformative experience once you've had it. It's different than people expect. And I think that's what's so helpful about a show like yours is to really get the word out about if you love to drive and you love cars, and I've grown up that way, try out go test drive an EV. It's a really fun experience.
Yeah, they really are terrific. I've just been driving a Mustang Mach-E for the last week or so. And as you say, it's somewhat transformative. You get a different take on things. What about technology going forward? I mean, I think a lot of people are, or maybe, you tell me, I would be concerned about installing something at some expense and then finding that what I installed was not technically up to snuff within 2 or 3 years. I mean, what's your take on quick obsolescence of charging?
So we have chargers that have been out there for 7 years, a decade, or something like that. So they have a long life value. There's not a lot of change happening in terms of the interaction with the vehicle, so there is flexibility there. This is why we've designed, for example, the ChargePoint Home Flex the way that we have. You may live in a home today that has panel capacity to support 32 amps or 16 amps, and these are all different things that affect the rate of how fast we can charge your vehicle. Or your vehicle may have a constraint of how fast it can inject or intake the power, if you will. And so we've designed the ChargePoint Home Flex that you can actually set the amperage rate in correspondence to what your current car is capable of, as well as your electrical panel capacity, so that you do have forward compatibility with as you change vehicles, or you change homes, or you upgrade your home environment, that you can get the most out of that charger. So that is a fundamental approach that we take to our product design. We also take that approach to our fast charge DC products, which are very modular in nature. And so if a different cable type does come out, it is a very simple replacement to change that. And so that's been a big investment in our architecture of how we design our hardware products. And we do that also so that we can have a great experience for our drivers. So we want to make sure those stations are always up and available. And so we've designed the stations in such a way to minimize downtime by having very modular replaceable parts. And so that is also kind of that, making sure that that investment lasts for a long time.
Right. We're talking with Bill Loewenthal. He is Senior Vice President of Product for ChargePoint, talking about EV infrastructure and the fascinating growth there. Where do you think some of your best opportunities for growth are? I mean, it's one thing to have all these opportunities, and that's great. At the same time, figuring out which your best opportunities are is often the toughest thing in business. Talk a bit about that, would you?
So, super question. Yeah, it is a very exciting business from a business perspective. And, it's a very large market that has to go through this electrification journey. Our approach has been kind of very vertical. And so when you look at that commercial space and workplace and parking, those are the logical environments where there's been great adoption of electric vehicle infrastructure. We're seeing, particularly with COVID, as folks weren't frequenting the office as much, they did equip their homes with EV chargers or their multifamily properties. And so what's kind of so elegant about the portfolio that ChargePoint has is the technology kind of meets all these use cases very interchangeably. So we don't have to specifically build technology for a specific segment. But activating the segment requires the right partners and installation partners and channel resellers. And very much we see them focused on that large commercial opportunity, the various residential opportunities, and then fleet. And fleet is a very, very large transformative opportunity that requires a superset of some of the capabilities that we put into other application areas. For example, if one is electrifying a fleet whose business is to deliver typically, people, services, or packages, that's a mission critical operation for them. So it's a very technical, monitored, end-to-end sale. If any of your folks are in the technology space, it's the difference of selling a technology product to a consumer versus selling it to someone's mission critical data center. And so we take that very seriously. And so we've invested a lot to really help the transformation of fleets to electric mobility. And so that has then required us to offer more services to support the ongoing operations of those depots. So a very exciting part of the business. And that's a big growth item over the next, 10 to 15 years.
Is that where you think we're going to see the biggest percentage of adoption or the soonest adoption of electric vehicles, or are you seeing it concurrent with what will happen on the consumer side?
That's a great question. I think it's more concurrent, and some of the differences on the fleet side is there's some very specific vehicle types they need based on the roles those vehicles play in the environment. And so those are coming out at different, speeds to market. One of the, think of this in our consumer lives. I'm really looking forward to the electric garbage truck.
Because both. Just not to hear the garbage truck would be enough.
Yeah, exactly right. And so you're going to see, and I think the transformation to fleet will be a really important signal to consumers that EV is here. And I think in general with consumers, they don't realize it yet, but everyone's going to be driving an EV, and it's just they don't realize it yet. But when you see that package delivery truck, the postal truck, the garbage truck, the city buses all going by in an electrically powered, and all the benefits those enterprises have, I think that is also a really important catalyst for the rest of the population, if you will. They're here, they're easy to drive, fun to drive, easy to charge, and it's a simple transition. So I think that will be a very illustrative example to society that we're making this transition.
Right. Let's talk quickly about range, and maybe range will be solved, or maybe range isn't even a problem, depending on how you look at it. But let's talk a bit about that. A lot of people buy vehicles not for what they do every day, but for the thing they might do a few times a year, right? And that is what, in large part, one of the reasons I think we haven't seen greater adoption of EVs up till now. What's your take on where the technology will take us, where battery technology will take us, where charging technology will take us, that will alleviate range as an issue?
So, great question. I've bought in a lot of cars in my life, and I never evaluated how big the gas tank was.
Well, then that's because you have unlimited range when you have a gasoline car, right? I mean, you can get gas anywhere, and off you go in 5 minutes. And I think that's something you cannot do yet in EVs, and it's a stumbling block for some. So
yeah, you can do it more than people realize. And so in your day-to-day life, you're really onboarding fuel at home and at work and around town, and you're really just replacing the fuel you consumed in between stops. And so I think one of the big experience differences is it's that fueling model of I fuel while I'm parked. Now, of course, I want to make that journey to the beach or to the mountains, and I need to be ensured that I can make that long journey. And so in the vehicles that are coming upwards north of 250 miles of range, you're seeing that opportunity so that you are satisfying the range anxiety for those consumers. And we're seeing the deployment of stations along all these corridors. And so if you want to drive between LA and San Francisco, between where you live and where I live, there's a whole number of places to stop along the corridors that make that as routine travel stops. And so again, I would consult the ChargePoint map through the mobile app or the website. But yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of places to charge, and more fast charge sites on major corridors. So we have projects on the East Coast, throughout Colorado, throughout California, that make it so I can ski and surf in the same day with my electric car.
Got it. What should I have asked you that I have not asked you, Bill? Or what should consumers know about this that we haven't talked about in this interview?
So I think some things that are helpful for folks to understand in terms of how this works is we're providing the solution to the site host, and we're not setting the price of what that site host is charging for the electricity. So we're enabling that site host to set their pricing based on their particular business objectives. Many of them may be in a mixed-use facility, so they're trying to charge their own fleet vehicles or potentially employees, but also make it available to the public. And so we're giving them the tools to do that. And then you might see the ChargePoint network out there, and then other networks like Electrify America or EVgo or the Flow network, and we interoperate with all these folks. And their business is different. They're providing a service to consumers like we are, but their business is to own those chargers and to sell electricity, where the ChargePoint business is to enable the folks that want to own the chargers and sell electricity or serve their users. So we're really a technology and solution provider, and so I think that's one dynamic that people. It's obviously hard for them to understand that when they.
Well, you're kind of operating as Amazon operates with retailers and makers of products and marketers of products. It strikes me.
Yeah, that's a good example. So we're an enabler of the market, and we're enabling the site host to accomplish their business objectives.
Yeah,
we want to do it. We want to do it in such a way that it's a very consistent experience for drivers, a seamless one, an easy one, and propels the EV industry overall.
Right. Well, before I let you go, please remind our listeners again how they can find out more information about ChargePoint.
Please go to chargepoint.com, or you can download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and you can try out our mobile app. There's no charge to the consumer, and then you'll have access to where the EV chargers are, and then hopefully you'll get an EV and use it.
Terrific. And they are going to love that EV, won't they, Bill?
They will. It's a fun experience.
Absolutely. Well, we've been chatting with Bill Loewenthal. He is Senior Vice President of Product at ChargePoint. Thanks so much for being with us, Bill. I learned so much, and I think we could talk for another half hour or so about this and still just be scratching the surface.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. And that was our interview with Bill Loewenthal. He is the Senior Vice President of Product at ChargePoint. Fascinating stuff. I mean, a lot going on. It's not just about buying an electric vehicle, is it? It's buying an electric vehicle and then everything that goes with it, which includes a whole different way to fill up or fuel your vehicle, get power for your vehicle. So fascinating stuff with Bill Loewenthal. And the always fascinating Chris Teague has been with us again. Thanks so much for being with us, Chris. We appreciate it.
You always flatter me, Jack, and I hope to flatter everyone who's listening. If you like what you heard, please hit the like or subscribe button and leave us a review. It will help us continue to grow and get in front of more people to bring them along for the ride.
We'd love to have them join us for the ride. If you like the show, please recommend to others that they listen to. America on the Road is on all the various podcast platforms, the important ones anyway, the ones wise enough to carry us. So let them know that they can find America on the Road where they listen to their podcasts. And you might want to check out my book, The GR Factor, Unleashing the Undeniable Power of the Golden Rule. That's the way we kind of live our lives here on America on the Road. And I'd love to have you sample that book. It might help you, and that's the reason we do what we do here on America on the Road. So we do thank you for being with us right here on America on the Road. We thank our sponsor, Mercury Insurance, for providing that sponsorship and helping us come to you. And we hope you join us again. Chris Teague and I will be back with you again right here next week for another edition of America on the Road. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at mercuryinsurance.com.